The perfect media storm.
Here's the image that we all should be focusing on here. This is the methane bubbling up in the Baltic Sea in the United States. That would be the big story. It should be anyway. But this was the perfect media storm because guess what has paved over this potential World War III pretext event is Hurricane Ian. So this is just wall-to-wall coverage. The Nord Stream story is a non-event in the United States. A few mentions at the beginning of that very dangerous and crucial and consequential event in the Baltic Sea. You'll never hear it spoken of. It's just going to get washed under the wake of Hurricane Ian. And that's not to diminish the suffering and the damage going on. It's unbelievable. There's billions and billions of dollars of damage. This would be the equivalent of a major war zone. Whole towns are wiped out. Whole areas, docks, segways between islands and the mainland have been taken out. Sanibel Island down by Tampa is one example, is literally gone. So all this sort of road traffic is gone basically for the time being. And there's a massive amount of air rescue operations to get people out. They've got sewage water problems and all sorts of other things. The sea has receded in many areas, but this is probably one of the worst storms ever on record. Not the strongest, but the fact that it hit landfall and went right up the center of the state, and now is hitting slightly weaker but still strong in Georgia, in South Carolina, and North Carolina in the next 48 hours. But I think we have a clip from Ron DeSantis here. This is, I believe, Charlotte County. He's giving an update just last night on the status of all this, but we can roll that.
In all told, search and rescue operations, it started in the wee hours of the morning. As soon as the winds died down enough to where it was safe, you had Coast Guard assets, you had urban search and rescue teams. We've had the National Guard out assisting people. There have been more than 700 confirmed rescues, and there's likely many more than that that will be confirmed as more data comes in. People have been rescued from places like Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Marco Island, as well as the Barrier Islands in Charlotte County. Obviously, there was a lot of calls coming in as the storm was really raging yesterday. People who did not evacuate were hunkered down. There was storm surge. There was a lot of apprehension, understandably. When initially the first responders came this morning, people would wave them down, whether they were by helicopter, boat, or high water vehicle. Now what they're finding is on places like Sanibel, most of the residents are just waving thank you for coming, but they say that they're fine and that they're staying put. Now, I think that there's going to be issues with being on some of those islands because they're not going to have services like we expect for quite some time, given the limitations of transportation. But nevertheless, that's a sign that some of the folks who did ride it out are stabilized in their home.
So you can get an idea that the total devastation. It's some people say that's a 40-year that's so at least and in terms of the death toll, not talking number they would need to before they announce any of that. So you might hear some announcements along those lines in the days. Hopefully those numbers are not very high, but you can see that's kind of Ron DeSantis's one of his dress rehearsals potentially for presidential nomination in 2024. Sad and serious event, but he's also getting attacked by the Democrat camps on this. So they've used this storm as a chance to sort of attack DeSantis as being a kind of pro-Trumper, a climate denier, and say, well, you know, there's even some people kind of making the thing like, well, you need federal funding now, don't you? But you're against the federal government. They're talking about Florida, which has marketed itself as the free state of Florida because DeSantis is basically saying no more COVID restrictions, no more lockdowns, no mask mandates, no vaccine mandates. So they're using this opportunity to take the shot, and it's not going over well. Bad optics for Democrats that are doing that. Here's one really good example. This is The View. This is a U.S. talk show I think some people know what this show's about. It's Whoopi Goldberg and cast and crew, and they sit around talking. But listen to this comment on Hurricane Ian and DeSantis here, and they'll give you an idea that the climate change argument is just completely out of control on this storm. But go ahead and roll this.
Quote from Governor DeSantis about climate change. Quote, I am not in the pews of the church of the global warming leftists. This is what he thinks about climate change. And now his state is getting hit with one of the worst hurricanes that they will ever see.
So what's she saying there? She's saying that Florida only got hit by this storm because of DeSantis' position on climate change.
Yeah, and Republicans more broadly, their denial of climate change is one of the reasons why this storm was particularly harsh, if you can believe that. And they need to we need more spending on climate change. So there's people campaigning in the run-up to the midterms using Hurricane Ian as the rallying cry to do more to fight climate change. And if you ask anybody, what's the connection between climate policy and this storm? Can you show any scientific link? If we spend more, if we spend a few trillion more, is it going to dampen the power of these hurricanes? I mean, this is just total insanity. But in a way, it's good, Mike, that people are kind of showing themselves to be completely hysterical right now, because it kind of shows all the sort of demagoguery that goes along with the whole climate change conversation. But I'm sure, you got the same, didn't you, with the heat wave in the UK recently, right?
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's